How we doing? Driving a different car today. I received a question on Quora.com, my really least favorite website. I absolutely hate Quora.com. I can't stand it. Just stupid questions. Like this one lady, this one I didn't receive, but this lady was like, my son wants to move out. What should I do to stop him? I don't think he should move out until he's 25. And he's 19, by the way. Like, what? What? Did I just read that? So this one was from John Bonham. Thank you, John, for asking the question. It asks, why do some Orthodox Jews fail to see that Yeshua, which is what the Messianic Jews call Jesus, I shouldn't say Messianic Jews, just Christians who call themselves Messianic Jews, call Jesus, is the Messiah? Is it because, and he gave two options, but then left it open that there could be a third option, although John Bonham, in his great knowledge and wisdom, knows that it must really be one of those two, right? And then the possibility that it's something different is kind of beyond possibility because of how smart John Bonham is. But he did give the possibility that it could be the third one. So is it because the rabbis absolutely prohibited Isaiah 53 from being read in the synagogues? Ooh. Or is it because of John 8:44? Doesn't say what John 8:44 said. Or is it another reason? So what is it? It has to be one of those three, right? I mean, obviously with the third one, could be anything. So yeah, it has to be one of those three. But I think he's itching that it's going to be one of the first two. Now, so the first question is, did the rabbis prohibit Isaiah 53 from being read in the synagogue? And the answer is no. There is absolutely no such prohibition against Isaiah 53 being read in the synagogue. All it is that it's not one of the many, many passages in the Bible that are read liturgically. There's no prohibition against it. As a matter of fact, if someone would want to read Isaiah 53 as a haftarah, they could make the blessings before and after it, and those blessings would not be made in vain according to rabbinical law. Any 10 verses from anywhere in in the prophets, you can technically read the blessings before and after and fulfill the obligation of reading a haftarah, reading from the prophets in the synagogue on the Shabbos morning. The custom is that there are certain readings that are attached to the Torah readings of that day, and so therefore we don't just read anything. But there is absolutely no prohibition against reading Isaiah 53. As a matter of fact, the Talmud actually lists portions that one is discouraged from reading liturgically. Again, doesn't mean you can't read it, sit and read it by yourself. We're talking about liturgical readings. The reading of the haftarah is what I am assuming he's referring to. And we don't even really follow that, because one of the readings that suggested not to read is Ezekiel 1, and we read that on Pentecost. And there are different opinions whether one may or may not read that. But the custom is that we do. And so there is absolutely no prohibition against reading Isaiah 53, even liturgically, and there's certainly no prohibition against reading Isaiah 53 as just something you want to read. In fact, I read through the whole Bible, the whole Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament. Although I would actually modify that and say what Protestants call the Old Testament, because there are Christians that have more books in their Old Testament than we have in our Bible. Excuse me. But I personally read through the whole Hebrew Bible. I've done it a few times. I'm trying now, since last year was the first time in a while that I'd done it. Maybe it was 2 years ago. Anyway, I'm right now, we read the whole Torah liturgically every year in synagogue, the first 5 books of the Bible. And then, as you are probably referring to, and you probably heard this from somebody else, and you don't really understand what you're talking about. Isaiah, of all of the books of the prophets, most of the liturgical readings on the Saturday morning, after we finish the Torah reading, we call the Haftarah, are coming from Isaiah. And yet we do not read all of Isaiah, and there are many of the other books, maybe one time we read something from them, But personally, I do read through I try to read through the whole scripture, and I've read Isaiah 53 many times. Did not convince me, nothing convinced me from that reading that it was talking about Jesus of Nazareth. Now, obviously, I would expect a Christian to find references to Jesus everywhere in our scripture, because they love Jesus, and good for them. It's Jesus is the one who took you away from idolatry and paganism. That's a wonderful thing. You're bringing, he brought you closer to the truth, which is the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses that God gave. And the fact of the matter is, Rabbi Yaakov Emden wrote this, that it was a wonderful thing that the church and Christianity and Jesus himself brought Torah to the world. And so, I, as a Jew, my religion is the Torah religion. Your religion is Christianity. I think we can live in peace because we're in a fallen world, as we both agree, after the sin of Adam. And so there is a lot of darkness, but the fact of the matter is, and like you're referring to when you asked, is it John 8:44, which says, "Ye are the sons of your father the devil." And so basically, your interpretation of that is that Orthodox Jews are the sons of the devil, which I don't think is really, Jesus was obviously, if you read that in the context and everything, Jesus always spoke in parables. And he didn't mean that we are biologically the seed of the devil. He meant that this, often in Scripture, the word child or son, certainly in the Hebrew Bible, can also refer to a disciple. But it doesn't mean that we have satanic DNA. Or in the Greek word there is diabolos, which is translated as the devil. It's which is different than Satan, which is different than Lucifer. These terms are different terms, and you can debate as to whether or not they're referring to the same entity or not. There's nothing scripturally that demands us to say that. And the term, I should do a study to see, does that word diabolos appear anywhere in the Septuagint? And what would be the Hebrew equivalent? Because in the Hebrew there is no equivalent of the devil. Satan is a Hebrew word. You do have Satan, in the Hebrew Bible, who was presented as an angel who is a prosecuting attorney in heaven. You know, he talks freely with God. He makes a bet with God in Job, but he is ultimately a servant of God. He cannot do anything independently. It's not this dualistic Zoroastrian idea that that there's God versus Satan. Very plainly, the Satan is a servant of God, whose job it is to be the enemy of man in order to make our lives more productive, like a drill sergeant. Curses us out, so we should be stronger by defeating him. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But I'm talking from a scriptural point of view, not bringing anything from the Talmud or anything else. As far as this issue, are we, meaning Jesus certainly is not saying that Orthodox Jews are the biological children of the devil. He's using it in a metaphoric sense. And so therefore it's not something that people are stuck with, essentially. So what is it? Which answer is it? An answer that I would give you is, look in Zechariah. I don't remember the chapter and verse offhand. But Zechariah says that it will come in the future that 10 men of all nations will come and grab onto the cloak of he who is a Jew and say, "Let us go with you, for we have heard that God is with you." Now, so either the Jews are right or the Christians are right. And obviously Zechariah is prophesying that the nations in the end times will recognize that the Jews are right. Now, does that mean it's necessarily true? Just because he's prophesying that that's what the nations will see? It's a good question. Maybe not. And so my friend Rabbi Bart Sadok, when he was approached by one of my favorite pastors I enjoyed listening to, was what's that guy's name? He wrote the late great Planet Earth, Dr. What's that guy's name? I can't think of his name right now. Hal Lindsey. He was approached by Hal Lindsey and said, he gave him the whole spiel, the missionary spiel. And Rabbi Bart Sadok answered. He said, I don't care if I'm right or if you're right, as long as when the day comes we can both go and hold hands and say, "Blessed be he who comes in the name of the Lord." And that's the real answer. Nobody's the Messiah until they do the things the Messiah says. Now I'm getting to Jewish perspective, which again is going to be different than Christian perspective, and I respect that. But as far as the Jewish religion is concerned, this is the answer. Maimonides brings this. He gives a whole list of requirements. What does the Messiah have to do to be the Messiah? And Jesus hasn't done any of them. All the things, all the prophecies that Christians point to in what they call the Old Testament, and which we consider to be current and nothing old about it.
One moment, please, while we connect your call.
No, I didn't do that. No. How do I turn this off? What happened here? No. How do I turn it off? Yeah, I pressed the button by accident. I didn't mean to press that. My hat hit the button.
Please hold while we transfer you to a hum specialist.
No. How do I turn this off? What is this thing?
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. Your call may be monitored or recorded for quality assurance and security.
Sorry about that. So, it's like I was saying, that's the answer there. Here we go. Why do we believe, what does it mean, the Messiah? I could ask you the same question. Why don't you believe that that Muhammad is a prophet, because it's not true, I mean, or the answer is because you're not a Muslim, I mean, that's the answer, one or the other, but it's two different religions. But the answer that I want to give here is that all of the prophecies that Christians say refer to Jesus are incidental. Oh, Micah says the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem. Micah doesn't actually say that. He's referring to the fact that David came from Bethlehem, and that the Messiah would be from the line of David. But all these incidental things, well, there are plenty of people born in Bethlehem. Being born in Bethlehem doesn't make you that you have to be the Messiah if you're born in Bethlehem. Right? You hear what I'm saying? So, and there are many, and all the other prophecies that are said to be referring, that the Christians say are in the Old Testament, say to be referring to Jesus, are that type of prophecies. They're incidental, that could happen to anybody. But the absolute prophecies, the regathering the exiles, the rebuilding of the temple, and the most important one, because there could be a fake, or say Antichrist or something like that, regathering the exiles. That could happen. There could be a fake temple. I mean, the Christians believe there will be a tribulation temple, that the Antichrist will come from, and that's totally possible. And I believe something like that probably will happen, and that does not prove Christianity right. But I do believe that something like that is quite likely, with the Zionist movement. And I do consider the modern Zionist movement to be essentially like an Antichrist movement, meaning anti-Messiah movement, because it's holding back the Messiah from coming. But the answer is that until someone comes and does, what the Messiah is supposed to do, they haven't done the job yet.
I'm going to mow his lawn.
You are? Really?
I am. Drive careful. I'm trying to hurry. Yeah.
So, that's the answer. Until someone, and the most important thing is that for the Messiah to do is to turn the hearts of all people back to God. Isaiah says, nation will not lift up sword against nation, neither will they learn of war anymore. And no one will have to teach anybody about God, because they'll all know about God, from the least of them to the greatest of them. Right? Because the knowledge of the Lord will cover the earth as the waters cover the seas. So that means that until that happens, the Messiah is not here. Now, of course, the Christians are going to say that's going to be the second coming. That's when that's going to happen, second coming. Okay, fine. So when there's a second coming, if it's Jesus, I'm more than happy if that's who the Messiah is. That's who becomes the Messiah when the time comes. It doesn't bother me. Doesn't mean that he is God. Doesn't mean that we worship Messiah. That's idolatry. But if Jesus comes back to be the Messiah, I won't have any problem with that. But nobody is the Messiah until they're the Messiah. Just like Lubavitcher Rebbe is not the Messiah, because he did not fulfill any of the requisite prophecies that are necessary to be the Messiah. And there's nowhere in the Hebrew Bible where it says thou shalt believe in the Messiah, because that would be like putting in the Hebrew Bible, thou shalt believe that the sky appears to be blue when on a clear day, when you look at the sky, that the sky is blue. Thou shalt believe that grass is green. Meaning everybody will know. Nobody will have, like I just said, nobody will have to know. Nobody will have to tell anybody the Messiah is here, for they will all know, from the least of them to the greatest of them. For the knowledge of the Lord will cover the earth as the waters cover the seas. I will remove from them the heart of stone and place within them a heart of flesh. And all these different prophecies, that's what we're looking forward to. All the things that you're looking forward to in the second coming. Same thing. If Lubavitcher Rebbe comes back and he's the Messiah, I don't care. I personally think it's ridiculous. I mean, if God is going to do a resurrection, a miracle to bring the Messiah, so why won't he just bring David himself to be the Messiah? Won't he? Or he could bring Hezekiah. Hezekiah was supposed to be the Messiah in his time, but he was very close, but he failed. I don't even see really Jesus as a potential Messiah personally, but if that's what happens in the end, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. I'm very happy. But until those prerequisites are done, and the thing is, the same thing. I mean, I know a lot of people will say, well, the Jews are going to be fooled by the Antichrist. I don't intend to allow myself to be fooled by any Antichrist. I plan to be extremely, extremely, skeptical about anybody who claims to be the Messiah. Right now, there's a crazy person who considers himself to be a rabbi, and he has a lot of followers, and in Jerusalem, although he's had a lot of problems, and he had accusations against him, and he was in prison. He ran around different kinds. He's saying Mashiach is here already. And somebody sent me an article about it, and I'm like, I'm not even interested in looking at that. Maybe I will out of curiosity. It's something I'm going to read in the bathroom. Just like my ancestor, the Chavos Yair, was interested in reading anything he could get his hands on about Shabtai Tzvi. Didn't mean, some people posit that he was a follower of Shabtai Tzvi. I personally don't think that to be true. I hope it's not true. But if it was, that was in the time when a lot of people were, a lot of great rabbis were brainwashed by this cultist. So it's possible, but that's the that's a possibility there. And so the same thing. I'm interested in reading these things, but it's more for entertainment, not to take these things seriously. But the thing is, instead of arguing about whether or not Jesus is the Jewish Messiah that's promised in the Old Testament, which he clearly isn't, or he hasn't fulfilled that yet, and so he's not until he does it, or whoever does it. But I can't even. I wanted to go to the mikveh because it's Lag Bomer tonight. He doesn't have his stock out yet either. All these people out on their boats. Maybe I'll get my bathing suit and go in my bathing suit. That's what I'm gonna have to do. So, how do we approach these types of questions? That's the answer. Until he's the Messiah, he's not the Messiah. Has nothing to do with Isaiah 53. Has nothing to do with John 8:44. I don't even believe in John 8:44, but I know you do, and I respect that. That's fine. It's a world that has a lot of diversity, and I'm a very big fan of Christians and Christianity. I think Christianity has been one of the best things, one of the best positive, things in the world. It's made the world a much better place. I believe it to be false, personally. And I respect it. Other people believe it to be true, and if that's what works for them, and it makes you a better person, I'm all for that. You know, it's like Freud said. You know, the anti-Semite doesn't hate the Jew because he killed Jesus, but because he brought Jesus. The people who hate the Jews hate Jesus as well because he was a Jew. They hate Christianity. They're not real Christians. You know, and you know, they feel uncomfortable that somebody tells them they got to do something. They'd rather be old-fashioned pagans who can do whatever they want. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. And for the record, I do not believe Jesus is the Messiah, and I do not believe he will be. But like Rabbi Bart Sadok said, if he would, then blessed be he who comes in the name of the Lord. So let's wait until it happens. Until he does it, he's not. All right. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment all the best.